Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our haunted house retrospective with Sinister, starring Ethan Hawke. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and co-creator of the comic Psychon from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
Also, apparently now also from IDW, which is news to me.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway,
you've got to tell us about the IDW-ness.
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Later.
All right. But that's very, very exciting. Okay, IDW for Mr. Halloween Man. And finally, also joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Sinister is a 2012 supernatural horror film directed by Scott Derrickson and written by Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. It stars Ethan Hawke as fictional true crime writer Elliot Oswalt, who discovers a box of home movies in his attic that puts his family in danger. This is an interesting movie to discuss, and I can tell a little bit about how weird it was when I actually watched it. Let's go Tony, Julia, Jason, and this time Drew will wrap up the first impressions. So, first impressions, first from Tony, and I also want to hear where you saw this movie. So,
okay.
First impressions, Tony.
I have to give my disclaimer because I know Cargill. We've known each other since he was writing for Ain't It Cool under the pseudonym Massa Worm, and we used to just hang out with him, talk movies and stuff like that. He was the dude who reviewed stuff and often got stuck with he was the guy who really took it for the team a lot of times, and they would send him to, crappy movies, and he's always been, a pretty cool guy. He's written, now he's written 2, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 3 novels. My apologies again to Cargill if I don't know the third one.
True story.
But,
I spoiled the ending of Planet of the Apes to Massa Worm.
Oh no!
so embarrassed. I was really sad. But he was really hurt too.
But yeah. So and I saw this movie and was pretty excited. Here's a guy I know who's been working hard, working at his craft, and gets a chance to do a movie, which I thought was I think is a pretty scary movie. I enjoy it. I think I'm, as you know, not a fan of found footage movies now, and I don't know if I've ever been just a super fan, but I think the idea of a found footage movie about people finding the found footage was interesting too. I think that's a pretty good hook. I actually kind of liked it better the second time. I had several issues with just stuff the first time, and I didn't have as many issues the second time, and I actually ended up putting it on kind of in the background the third time just so I could catch up today. But yeah, I think it's scary. I think it's got a lot of, we watch a lot of horror movies, and so in the grand scheme of things, for a first outing, hey, especially from somebody that so you're like, hey, cool, a friend of mine is has a big movie that's coming out. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
With name actors, and the movie came about just through the director knew him through Ain't It Cool, and they just decided to hang out. No, it wasn't like, hey, let's talk movies, and they ended up talking movies. Just randomly. I think in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
And he had a dream. He was saying, hey, I had this dream, and I wrote this down. This terrible stuff was happening in this dream. I'm hoping, again, if Cargill, if I'm not saying this right, he listens to this. I'm like, oops. But I want to say, if I remember correctly, it came from a dream. And then he's like, hey, we should write that out. I don't know if he'd already written it or had the treatment yet. And then, the guy was like, hey, well, I know this guy. And it happened to be, the lead. we used to hang out or whatever. They knew each other. I bet I can get him. And they're like, well, let's get him. And so, from there, they got a major actor, and made what I think is a pretty scary film. So
I have to say I read that as well, that there was a dream involved in the writing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that wasn't my dream, because there's some pretty crazy stuff in here.
Yeah.
My dream involved, submarines and zombies, so
That's
guess
that's
not
a good story, by the way. I really like Zombie Submarine. Okay. Julia, first impressions, Sinister.
Well, I'm really mad at you people for making me watch this movie. It was scary as frick. Oh, my God. I kept saying to Jason as I was watching, it's like, I hate this movie. I hate this movie so much. But it wasn't because it wasn't good. It was because it was terrifying. I was really scared for most of the movie.
Well, also the parent thing. Like, I watched it again. I was like, oh, man, we made Julia watch this.
I know. That's what
not cool.
I was just saying that to Sophia today. I was like, they made me watch this movie, and I swear it's like, once again, I think it's a lot worse if you're a parent.
I can only imagine. It's scary enough. Like I said, when I watched it this time and realized that you were watching it, I was just like, oh, man.
Thank you for your compassion.
Tonight's going to be interesting.
Anyway, it's so freaking scary. I think the end actually is like almost, well, we'll talk about the end later, but I almost feel like the part before any of the supernatural stuff happens is even scarier than the actual supernatural part. Anyway, but yes, so if I could not have ever watched it, I would be happy to not have ever watched it.
Wow. Okay. Well, my first impression, because we'll let Drew wrap it up. My first impression, just that we watch a lot of horror movies, like you said, and most of them, are more stylish than this. Where, this is quite stylish, but my point is that their draw is something historical or something stylish, some element that you can take with you. This movie, I felt, had a great immediacy to it. I felt very afraid of it as I was watching it. The first time I watched it, I had actually moved to Colorado ahead of the family, and I was to stay in our house for about a month before everybody else moved in. So, I had moved in whatever boxes there were and some furniture, and I had bought a TV so that I would have a TV to watch. And I was watching this movie alone.
Oh, geez.
In the house in the snow, and I remember it was just terrifying. And the funny thing is, he has this basement office, and I would every day, around breakfast time, I would go look down the stairs at the basement, and I was like, I'm not going down there. Like no way.
That's funny. He does have a swanky office.
Now that's where our children live. So
yes. Well, now.
Well, you can shove them down there. Whatever. It builds character, I've heard.
It was bad. So I remember just being very, very freaked out by this movie. And watching it this time, I thought that it was very effective. But I cannot wait to hear what Drew has to say. Drew, lay it on us.
Okay, I am also going to put a disclaimer. Okay, if the screenwriter listens to this, which you are an Austinite, it's very possible, I apologize. I'm just voicing my opinion. Lord knows I have written some turds, so I'm not saying I'm a better writer than you, but I hated this movie. So much. First of all, it is so. I can't believe you guys were scared by this. I was so longing for the elegance of The Conjuring while watching this. It was like jump scare after jump scare after jump scare with the most ridiculous-looking monster I think I have ever.
I will have to say that I am not a big fan of the look of the monster. It doesn't really work for me.
Scary.
I thought that the monster, when he's finally revealed, he looks to me like, honestly, he looks like Rob Zombie. It's like, whoa, Rob Zombie.
You call him Mr. Boogie. Come up with some really creepy, Lewis Carroll boogeyman type design. There's so much you could have done with this, and he looks like a flunky from your local haunted house. Ethan Hawke, who has been in a lot of horror movies lately. He's in the vastly superior Daybreakers, which is an excellent vampire movie. He was in The Purge, which I also think is better than this. This is just generic crap. This is everything I don't like about modern horror. It's a little bit torture porn. It's a little bit found footage. It's a little bit ghost story. It's everything I hate about modern horror in one movie. Plus, remember when we were doing the Evil Dead movies way back? It's got that horrible saturated look that almost all modern horror movies have. I cannot. Like the only thing I liked about there's only two things I liked about this movie: the fact that it actually acknowledged modern technology and utilized it well, and the score. I have to say the score is excellent. Everything else, burn, baby, burn.
All right, I will give it up for the.
I haven't got a good sense of how Drew felt about the movie, though. How did you actually feel?
I will concede some of those points too. The saturatedness I didn't mind as much. It is really dark because I was watching on a monitor at one point. It was darker than I remembered it. I did not like the look of the Bagul at all. Like, that was not a thing that I really enjoyed. Like, and I think you're right, especially when it's supposed to be like a timeless creature. It kind of doesn't feel timeless, really.
It could have done something.
It
feels very music video. Like, that's the thing I kept thinking.
Okay. I don't want to get into.
Sure.
I think it's perfectly fair to get into that bad guy, but for the listener, if they don't remember and haven't watched it recently, that guy doesn't get revealed until the third act of the film.
Sure.
We need to sort of, but it's a fair point. And so
can I add in one other thing? When we get around to talking about Vincent D'Onofrio, remind me to tell you a Vincent D'Onofrio story.
Done.
Cool. I also keep it on the back burner too. I wanted to talk about, and Julia will associate with this too, and I guess Jamie, if she was on, living with a writer and how much writer, because I definitely know, like, there's some bits where talking to Cargill, I kind of was like, all right, dude, there's the writer bits. I know these bits, Yeah. And so I'd like
I guess I have a better opinion of myself. I would never associate myself with this slime. Like, he's a terrible human
but
being.
I would, and I think this is our good first topic, which is, so let me set it up real quick.
Yeah, start it off with why we get to where we're at, why we get to where the movie is.
The beginning of the film, basically the setup of this film is you've got Ethan Hawke, and he is a writer who has had some modicum of success in the increasingly shrinking past. And so he has moved his family to, and he's a true crime writer. So, his bestseller was a story about a real murder, and he's had a few follow-ups that were disappointing. And so now he's moved his family to a house where an entire family was hanged. And we can get in a minute to the effect of that hanging, or we can talk about it now. But regardless, he's moved his family to that so he can investigate that murder. And a whole bunch of strange things begin happening as he moves in, not least which is the moment he moves in, he finds a box of Super 8 millimeter, or we just call them Super 8, a bunch of Super 8 films and projector in the attic that appear to have recorded the deaths, at least of the first family, and he begins to watch more of them as they go. Anyway,
you mentioned that he moved into the house that the actual murder.
Yeah, and it's right. So I want to talk a little bit about this character, because one of the reasons why I loved it, and it seems like one of the reasons why Drew maybe didn't like it, was my reaction to this Ethan Hawke character and his arrogance as a writer. And like I'm thinking of right now, it's playing on the TV on my wall, and his wife is saying, we need to get out of here, we need to go, or their family isn't reacting well, and he's like, look, this could be my biggest book yet, just one, this could be huge, this could be my Truman Capote type story, and he's just not hearing it. Julia, what was your reaction to this character when you were?
Oh gosh, that's a dangerous question. Because I absolutely did identify with being married to a writer.
Yeah.
It was like this. The thing is that, he was so completely absorbed with what he was working on that the rest of the world kind of didn't matter. And so I'm not saying that you're that way, honey.
Well, you can
I'm just saying that there's definitely a kind of one-track mind approach that writers have when they're working on a project that I totally identified with. I was really mad at him for moving into the house because the people were killed. That was, and not telling his wife. That was mean and horrible.
That was hilarious.
She should divorce him.
She said
she talks about it at one point. She should have.
The first scene, the police officer played by Fred Thompson,
best actor in the movie, by the way.
Hunt for Red October,
he's awesome.
and Law and Order
of the U.S. Senate,
and remarkably the United States Senate. Fred Thompson goes, I think this is in very poor taste, and he waves his hand at the house, and she's like, well, what's the matter with the house, honey? And he's like, and she goes, did something bad happen 2 houses down? And he's like,
no, she goes,
no.
You didn't move us into a house like 2 houses down from the crime scene, did you? And she goes, never mind, don't even answer that.
Right.
And later on he's like, well, it wasn't 2 houses.
And I love that he has the unmitigated gall later for her when he goes, well, technically you asked me if it happened 2 houses down. I'm like, that alone actually is bad. I'm sorry, Tony, I interrupted you.
No, I was just saying he's such a jerk about that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that kind of jerkiness, though, is born of a compulsion that I completely identify with. That what he wants more than anything else is to reclaim the ego that he feels he's lost, which requires him to finish this book. And there's nothing that is going to prevent him from finishing this book. So if he has to fudge the truth about where he's moved into, and if he has to stay up all night, he's going to do all those things. And if it means like drinking too much, there's nothing that's going to get in the way of finishing it. I am not this way, okay? I'm not this obsessive. However...
Well, I would hope you wouldn't move Julia into a murder house.
However, I totally identified with it in the same sense that when we watched The Shining, you remember that one thing I kept coming back to is I felt really bad that this guy wasn't getting any writing done. I kind of, all this stuff is going on, and I'm thinking, he needs to be knocking out like 2,000 words a day. I don't see him getting it done, and it made me very sad. That's my takeaway from The Shining.
Awesome.
So I really identified with this guy, absolutely. I also love the fact that what he's trying to accomplish in the end is a hit true crime novel. In other words, no matter how good it gets, it's still going to be a novel about a sleazy murder wherever the hell this is. Where is this supposed to be anyway?
Pennsylvania. Spooky Pennsylvania.
Yes. Well, Night of the Living Dead takes place in Pennsylvania. There's a historical creepiness to Pennsylvania that I can live with. But yeah, I think Drew, your point is, no, this guy's unforgivable. Can you list his many sins for us? You're welcome to.
Well, this is, as I was saying before we started recording, this guy makes some of the best/worst examples of terrible horror movie decision making. In a like I haven't seen it in this blatant in a long time. So okay, we already know he moves his family into a murder house.
Yeah,
he finds creepy, basically snuff films. He finds a bunch of snuff films that he repeatedly watches. He doesn't immediately call the cops.
He never calls the cops. He doesn't ever call the cops.
He does eventually start working with a cop, to his credit. And
but he didn't call the cops. The cops showed up because he fell through the ceiling.
You were absolutely right, Julia. He never actually does call the cops. Let's see here. When he sees the monster, and people keep saying, "Oh, what's this guy?" Okay, that doesn't look like a guy. It looks like a monster. When he sees the monster first show up in the snuff films, which had previously not been there, he just starts appearing. He doesn't go, okay, that's weird, burn them and leave immediately. His son starts having night terrors.
Yes.
He doesn't realistically ever deal with that in any way, just keeps saying, oh, he'll be fine. And then finally, when his little daughter starts drawing pictures of murder, the murder that took place in the house, on the wall, he does not seem appropriately disturbed by this. And at no point does Ethan Hawke repeatedly get scared.
Yeah.
But he never acts like he's in as much danger as he's actually in.
Yeah, he's not even sufficiently freaked out by the fact that the projector keeps taking itself out and playing itself. But let me say this though: the whole movie I was watching it going, "Oh my God, move already, move already." Well, it turns out that moving already was actually the worst thing that he could do.
You're right. And so
really,
kudos to the screenwriters for thinking around that. I will credit for that.
But it's a mystery to him. He doesn't know that. Right. I mean, that's correct. But he does.
Well, he could go hang out. He could call Vincent D'Onofrio Van Helsing over and maybe come up with some kind of better plan, or Deputy. He's hanging out with Deputy Dewey a lot.
Yes. We start this movie. I have to say, you mentioned the use of technology in this movie, and that was one of the things that I just loved. The fact that it's not a found footage film, but nevertheless, you've got two kinds of technology that are used very well. One is extremely modern, the Skype, which I haven't seen used this way. If you think back to
I just loved that the whole time they were Skyping, Vincent D'Onofrio's looking down at the screen instead of up at the camera, because that's what people actually do in real life.
And so when he wants to identify some markings that are on these films, he Skypes with a local university professor. And when you think about it, like if you look at Suspiria by Dario Argento, which is a great film, okay, there's a point where the character has to get information similar to what Ethan Hawke needs, and she has to drive all the way to a university in Berlin, to go talk to somebody who.
Well, he's also Googling stuff. He takes pictures of things and then searches. I do have to say, I've never seen modern technology used as well in a modern horror film. I will give this movie that much credit.
Yeah, and the Super 8 stuff is awesome. I mean, the fact that he's found these original films, and Julia was like, well, would he know how to loop the Super 8 into the Super 8 projector? And I was like, probably. And I say that because I do, and I'm about Ethan Hawke's age, and the reason is, I used to borrow Super 8 movies from the library. And
well, he might. I mean, he could have Googled that too. You know what I mean?
That's true. I love the way when he finds this box of Super 8 films. I love the way they always really quickly do this thing where they just show all the different steps to setting up a projector, with the clicking this and sort of swatting this down and putting this reel there, and you got to feed some of the tape into the other reels so that it'll keep going, and on and on. It's all really cool. And we open up, he's the film that he sees is one of this family being hanged, and in the hanging, it's Super 8 film. So it's so cool. You see it filmed in this extraordinarily grainy 8mm. The only things that distinguished Super 8 was that it had sound, really. But other than that, it's just 8mm film, and the way they are hanged, they've got. How best to describe it? They've got the nooses, the rope goes over a great tree limb, and then somehow another enormous tree limb that acts as a counterweight is sawed and falls, and that causes the four people to lift off the ground and be strangled. And it is truly astonishing. And here's something that I have to mention. Drew, you said torture porn, and I think there's an element of that in all of these deaths, and yet there's no gore in this movie.
No, it's not a gory movie, but I mean, one of the OG torture movies is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's not especially gory either.
No, that's absolutely true. There's almost none in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's extraordinarily intense. And there's one of these murders is the lawnmower murder, where you see nothing. You literally see nothing. You see the lawnmower is moving across the lawn. You're not very good visibility because it's being lit by a flashlight. Move. Finally, you see a person laying there. You're like, ah! It's a big shock.
My problem with these, though, is that they put you in the position of being Ethan Hawke, so you were the viewer.
Yes.
So you're already detached because you're watching a movie within a movie.
Yeah.
And Ethan Hawke does not seem sufficiently freaked out by these movies. So why should I be scared?
I know. It's like he's watching porn. No, I agree.
Well,
I think he's just watching it.
He could be watching anything. He could be watching he seems a little unnerved. But like if I was watching he's watching snuff films. Okay,
I think book, right? Like for a fourth book. This is his fourth or fifth book where he deals with this all the time. That's why we're supposed to get his immunity.
Okay,
no, but it's
fair enough. But when a monster starts showing up,
it's different because it's not.
When the monster shows up, yeah, but.
It's not something where he's researching and he's looking at police files or anything like that. This is something that was left in his attic. Presumably nobody has seen it. Clearly they're home movies that the murderer has put in his attic. I mean, come on.
No,
the cops don't have this stuff.
But what I'm saying is the freaked outness. Yes, he should be freaked out for totally different things. Like, we do see him at the very beginning of the movie put up pictures of children who have been hanged who still have rope marks around their neck. He's putting stuff on the wall
be that as it may.
Every day he's going to stare at that. Yes,
if he is not scared
about
why should I be?
Stuff? Probably.
I disagree.
Why
he is numb to murder. But what I'm saying is, when you're watching this is not video. Again, this is not video that's public record or part of the cop's file.
Sure.
This is something that the murderer has put in his attic for him to find. That's what should be terrifying, not necessarily what he's even seeing.
Julia, do you agree with Drew or?
I'm saying that he's not sufficiently scared, but for a different reason than just because he's watching murder, but because this serial killer has put these videos in his attic.
If he's not, and if he's, for whatever reason, he's numb or whatever, I don't care if it's realistic or not. The effect that it happens on me is that it makes me bored. Because
I don't know.
He's not scared enough. He's not scared enough for me to feel fear for him. Like, he's not quite Blade, all right? It's not quite like, this is a monster movie, but the monsters aren't scared because the lead is a superhero. Like, it's not quite that. But, it's along those lines. Like, why should I feel fear for somebody that's not vulnerable?
Yeah, I didn't feel that at all. I say that because, first of all, he's drinking a lot, but also
that's like Noir detective. Like he could be Humphrey Bogart.
He shrinks back like the kid stuff. I mean, I bought his discomfort.
I just don't think I don't think he has to be scared for me to be scared. I found those videos terrifying.
And there were, and sometimes when there's a real shock, like with the lawnmower thing, he literally jumps out of his chair. But he reminded me a lot of and I'm not the first person to point this out, of Manhunter. And now I'm trying to remember the star of Manhunter, but when, William Peterson is watching films and is looking at the pictures, he's so into his mode of studying them that, it does.
Which would be great if this was a detective movie, but this is a horror film, and it's supposed to be scaring me.
It is scary, Drew. I don't care what you say. It is so scary.
So, okay. So
outside of a few jump startles, I was not scared once.
I was totally
The Conjuring lingers. Like, I was afraid for hours.
I have to tell you, I don't remember The Conjuring from last week, and this movie is really
The Conjuring is elegant. This movie is clunky.
I don't know, but it's a split decision clearly. Okay, so let's move on. As the film goes on, the other piece that happens. So I want to talk about the deputy because I think the deputy is a really wonderful addition to this. But before we do that, we should mention the score because you talked about this a little bit, Drew. Last week, I have to do a correction because last week I said that the Conjuring music was done by Trent Reznor. It wasn't. I'm sorry. Trent Reznor did the music for Gone Girl, and I had just mixed them up in my notes, and I'm sorry. So this is also not a Trent Reznor score, but it sure sounds like it. This is an amazing score, and it's full of some of the weirdest crap.
It is so weird.
I mean, like there's one point where he gets a video that shows a family in like 1976, I think, who've all been taped up and thrown into the back of a station wagon, and with a bunch of cans of gasoline. And the serial killer who's filming it tosses a torch of some kind into the car and sets them all on fire. And while that's going on, the music is this sort of pounding, like vroom, 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 and there's like a moaning.
It's so weird. It's really good. It's a really good soundtrack.
It reminded me. First of all, it reminded me a lot of the music from Night of the Living Dead. Do you remember the music from Night of the Living Dead? It was just this sort of This is very like that, except for that you've got, a lot more going on. You've got vocalizations. It's very strange.
Tony, what do you think of the music?
I think it's pretty effective. Like I was noticing the sound design actually in a lot of ways is definitely some of the highlights of. And I saw it twice since I watched it. So the second and third time I saw it, I was really noticing this time around the sound design, and kudos to all of the bits that happen. I was sufficiently freaked out by a lot of that. So I think they whoever they got their money's worth. It was really, really good.
I don't know this composer, but it's there's one where they've got a little girl who's like counting in the song. They're different songs. Each of the killings has a different theme of sorts. It's almost as though the music takes place within the scene, as though he could hear the music as well. But I don't think he can. I'm pretty sure that it's just a score that we're listening to. But boy, which makes it really strange, because if it's just a score we're listening to, what is going on with the moaning and stuff like that, And if this demon that we later reveal named Bagul is adding the music to these films, this demon is pretty creative. I mean, that's very interesting that he goes, I think if we used a little bit of reverb and some children chanting, that would
my only thing that I didn't think about until this watching it this time around was, for a guy who used to he started with fresco, right? There's he did things ancient times. I'm curious why Super 8, because we've gone past Super 8 by a fair amount.
So let's talk about
is the Bagul kind of is he an auteur? Is he you know what? I just love the grain of Super 8. I really like how I can add sound, and I just like getting in there and doing the work.
Maybe Super 8 is the only kind of film that holds people.
I have a theory about this.
In it.
But is he is he going to be 2 generations back? So just when holograms are around, is he going to be all right, guys, all the Bagul movies on Blu-ray?
Yes. I think that's exactly right. I think you've nailed it right there. And just to, so this is a good time.
He's an anachronism.
About this demon is that, okay, so what's going on is that this demon has been gathering videos of these murders that the demon instigates all along the way.
Well, the one thing, the creepy idea behind it is that he gets the children to murder their own families and film.
Sure.
Which
is a creepy idea. Even I, bitter ass me, will admit that is a creepy idea.
Yeah, he takes one of the kids and gets them under his power and kills the rest of them. And he takes one of the children into his demon realm.
To eat them, because he is Bagul, devourer of children.
Right, which I think is made up, but who knows?
No, it's got to be completely made up, because he's supposed to be the boogeyman.
Yeah, they did a good job of, they did some, on the website, there was, Bagul stuff, and they did a pretty good, campaign.
And when he consults with Vincent D'Onofrio has dug up, he digs up, woodcuts, and all that stuff is just great. And including, ancient versions of these murders where, one of the families in these snuff films is drowned in a fairly ingenious manner. I mean, they're all strapped to, beach chairs and then dragged backwards into a swimming pool so that their heads go down, their feet go up over the top, and they drown. And this requires almost no strength. The kid uses a rope to do it, and that's part of the mystery: is how are these murders being done, and why are the murders always being done in such a way that they require, ultimately, or a clue is they require almost no strength.
Yeah, and the people are always sedated. They're
always
drugged.
Sedated, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because children are doing it, and the only way that they're going to be able to murder 4 or 5 people at a time is if they can drug them first and probably go through some long and arduous machinations, such as tying everybody to these beach chairs to drag them backwards into a pool. But anyway, there's
which is all well and good, except I don't really feel like that they set that up well enough with the the daughter. Like there was a little bit, and not enough. Like I don't feel like
it almost seemed like it would have been made more sense if it was the boy with the night terrors.
Since the boys have
I would have bought that a little more.
Except I think it's the youngest each time, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know.
I mean that's just a rewrite away of making the one with the night terrors the youngest.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a million. Although the thing is that if they were going to create a situation where we were suspecting one of the children, it makes sense to make it the one that's not having the night terrors, because that then we would be.
So you think the boy with the night terrors was meant as a red herring?
I think it was, but I don't think it made it into this draft. If I had to guess, I think that's just one detail that just didn't make it. But in the end, basically, they don't even introduce the whole concept of the kids being the ones who are responsible until essentially near the very end. We don't know what's going on until, because for the longest time it's just this, some crazy serial killer is making these snuff films, and they also establish a pattern that we've seen in other serial killer movies, some that are completely not supernatural, which is that this serial killer is killing families, and he's following a pattern. In this case, the pattern is that each family, basically they move house to house. So
and they take Bagul with them.
But I mean, before we know that it's all about Bagul, it's this person in theory who is like, I live in this house, and it's a place where a family got killed before, and now I basically pick up, the serial killer catches my scent here, I move to the next house, and he kills me there. That's actually very Manhunterish, to be honest with you. There's a lot of Manhunter.
I have to question, since this is a haunted house retrospective, that also I'd be questioning whether or not this is a true haunted house movie.
It's definitely a haunted house.
Well, each house is haunted.
Yeah, it's haunted.
Is the house haunted, or are the images haunted?
I think it's.
Well, I'm not entirely positive. I'm not entirely positive, and I could be wrong, that every family finds the Super 8. But I guess it is the.
Before D'Onofrio says
before that,
you have to see the images of Bagul to summon him.
Yeah, but before that, like I said, in the past there's been frescoes and there's been whatever.
Right. And Tony asked this question of why the Super 8, and I think you nailed it exactly right, Tony. I think that Super 8 here is chosen to appeal in a peculiar way to Ethan Hawke himself as a Generation X person who would have been exposed to those things as a child because they would have belonged to his grandparents and parents. So I think you're right, that if Bagul keeps doing this business for another 30 years, I think there might be a bunch of DVDs or a bunch of Blu-rays or
well, whatever. He hasn't made it to VHS yet.
Yeah.
So he's got to make it there first.
Well,
I joke, but it was just funny, like I said, seeing it a second time. I didn't think about this at first, but just considering, because originally they started in the 60s, so he didn't find a bunch of Super 8 and some VHS and then digital camcorder. He found Super 8 specifically, and the main reason though is because Super 8 looks like Super 8, right? That looks kind of like it's a choice to make that grainy footage look like found footage, and it's a way to not make it look in found footage like a video camera, which we've already seen numerous times. So I understand. I mean, that's the real way. But, plot-wise, I just thought it was funny. I just like the idea that Bagul, really getting into his craft. Super 8 really speaks to me.
Thanks to Ethan Hawke, though, Bagul is now online and scanned in.
Yeah,
no, that's true. That's true. He can. Oh man!
So there's your sequel. There's your sequel right there.
Dude, now he can use iMovies.
Yeah.
Yes.
YouTube. As long as he doesn't upgrade to too far ahead, he's going to have a problem with that. But as long as somebody has an older Mac, Bagul can live on their Mac.
Yeah, because you saw him in the computer when Ethan Hawke transfers the movies into his computer. You actually see.
He turns his head.
That's the first time you see the creature move. Yeah.
Thanks, Apple computers. Now we have to worry about haunted Macintoshes.
Mm-hmm.
I like the business of him copying the Super 8 over to video. By the way, I'm sorry, Drew. Go ahead. I stepped on your line. Go ahead.
When all this stuff starts talking, or when this stuff starts happening, what I don't understand is when he gets he's talking to this guy who's an expert on occult crimes. Why doesn't he take one of these pictures of Bagul, email it over to Vincent Van Helsing, and say, okay, there is at least a guy dressed up like Bagul.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he's decided he has to keep all this stuff to himself.
Yes,
because he's a moron.
One of his
he's
stupid
a blind
decisions.
he's a moron.
Police at one point,
yeah.
and starts to say, hey, presumably to say, hey, I got a bunch of evidence here that you guys ought to look at, and then he hangs up on the police officer.
Like, never mind.
This makes zero sense, none.
Oh my gosh, can we talk about
I see. At first I was bothered by that, and later I realized the real, okay, and I understand why you would be mad at this, Drew, but the real reason within the plot is that's the moment he realizes this is how I'm going to make my comeback.
Yeah.
At this point, he's like, he makes the choice, whether, again, Drew, terrible choice, but he makes a choice at that point. He's like, I am back. This is going to get me back on the talk shows. This is going to do all of these things that I've wanted, that I'd hoped by moving into a murder house.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted. This is what I was searching for. And once he realizes that, definitely not Dad of the Year material, because that's ghoulish in itself. Well, but he's a ghoul as well. Like, I mean, he's a true crime, like all that stuff. Like, again, he puts hanged children up on his wall at the beginning. This is not a normal dude.
But I think there's an element of addiction there.
Of course.
He wants to do this story, and he's going to. People who are willing to sacrifice everything in an unhealthy manner still are often not really capable of saying it out loud that that's what they're doing.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that he would admit that he's putting his family in danger.
All that is accurate. I will concede to that. However, why should I care whether this guy lives or dies? Now you're getting into the Friday the 13th question. But at least those movies are fun and goofy in their way, but they're endearing. Like, I don't feel scared for a lot of victims in 80s monster movies and slasher movies because they're terrible people and you want them to die. And I wanted this guy to die because he's a terrible human being. So I'm empathizing with them.
I completely identified with him even as he was making all this terrible.
You could have saved his daughter the trouble. I would have suffocated that guy in his sleep if I ever met him. Like, I completely, I thought Fred Thompson's sheriff, was the sympathetic, I wouldn't want that guy in my town. He's an asshole.
He's totally self-centered, that's for sure. But he does have a turning point. There is a turn in the movie when he finally goes up. He's started to see this demon around. He finally goes up into the attic and he sees all of the missing children sitting in the attic watching 8mm films. And they look at him. He's like, you know what? Good enough. And he takes all the stuff and he burns it and he goes, "We're leaving now." Now admittedly, he's a little too late. He should have done this weeks ago. But
it turns out that it was the worst.
That just makes me feel bad for his poor wife and son and daughter. It doesn't make me feel bad for him.
Of course. But it's also, the other part of the movie is about obsession.
Yes.
And I think that's.
I understand that well enough though. For that to take root in me, there would have to be something there would be enough redeemable about this guy that where I'd latch in and go, okay, I get it. But there's never there.
I can tell you
what it
is.
Bad decision.
This is going to sound, maybe this is a cop-out, but I really, really did want him to succeed, and here's why. And as strange as it sounds, there's a point where he tucks in his daughter, and his daughter says, "Hey, are you going to write a really great book so that we can move out?" And he's like, "It's going to be the best book ever." And she says, and I'm mixing together two conversations, but she goes, "I want to be a writer who's famous just like you." I think he is desperate to maintain the identity that he feels like he has to fight to preserve to keep his dignity with his family. In other words, I think he's
with the outside world too, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I got to say, I totally identify with all of this stuff. The pressure to be what your children want, what your children see you as, can be wonderful, but it can also be poisonous if you misinterpret it. You know, I totally identify with that.
Well, maybe I can't empathize that because I am not yet a father.
However, I wouldn't lay that trip on you. I'm just saying that his desperate desire to be a good writer and a famous writer is selfish, but it's also wrapped up in this desire to be what he feels like he's promised these people he will be.
And maybe it's because it's just like I'm coming off of like this and subsequently like Supernatural season 9, which also kind of paints writing as this ultimately selfish thing. I resent that as somebody that writes also. Like that kind of makes me go like, fuck you. You have such a low opinion of us as people and as of our craft.
But it's
screw you. Screw that. If that's the view, I'm a good husband. You know, like.
No, I'm with you. I'm a decent husband. I'm a decent father. You know, but I think this is a funhouse mirror of what our profession is like. You know, and you know, I think it's one way of looking at it. And you're right that it's heavily trod ground. I mean, this is the thesis of The Shining, right? There's almost essentially no difference between what's going on here and what goes on with Jack.
You know, though, when I read, Stephen King does this same setup a lot, and Stephen King, for some reason, always invests it with a lot more humanity, no matter how many times he recycles it. And I just did not like this guy. When his daughter at the very end says, "Don't worry, Daddy, I'll make you famous again," I was like, yes, bury that act.
And you like Jack from The Shining?
Jack from The Shining's an asshole, but he's a lot more multidimensional than this guy. Like, and Ethan Hawke is a good actor.
I
don't know about that. I don't think so. I think they'd be pretty even.
Jack from The Shining was, if you remember, Jack from The Shining was a dick a lot.
No,
maybe it's because The Shining is 1,000 times better than this.
I don't think he's less of an ass. Like, they're both
he's as much of an asshole. I'll grant you that. Like, I'm not going to say he's not. But
it's not like I'm like, oh man, that Jack guy, I really feel he's a jerk ass. Like, it's not like I feel more. In fact, I feel a little bit more. Like, other than the fact that the guy moved into a murder house, which was stupid, the guy is actually like, you know, he doesn't just have a kid who's
okay, fair enough. But what about the guy in it?
He's got a kid who's going in boxes. Like, how the fuck?
Fair enough. Jack Torrance is an asshole.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What about the guy in it? What about like Stephen King? The Shining is not the only time where Stephen King has had a writer. The guy in Salem's Lot. Both of those guys are decent guys.
Misery.
That's right.
The scene where the box was so freaking scary to me because he's like hears noises from his office and he comes out and there's this box just sitting in the middle of the entryway or whatever. And he kind of gets startled by it because he doesn't understand why it's there. And all of a sudden it starts moving and opening. And we see the back of someone's head with very long hair sort of just pouring out of the box slowly backwards, like the face is about to come upside down, be facing you. And then the torso pops out and the arms kind of come out and he's screaming. And it looks like a woman because this boy has really long hair. But then you're like completely confused because you're like, that's not a woman's torso, and the scream, and then he realizes it's his son. He picks him up, but the screaming was so terrifying. That was such a scary scene. That was so scary to me.
That part was scary. I will grant you that. But that's a jump scare. That's
not a jump scare. It was a creepy, weird
thing.
It could be creepy and weird and still be a jump scare. It's not the sort of thing that's
you're not startled. You're just you're terrorized by it.
Drew, are you defining a jump scare as any scare that's really not necessary to the plot? Is that the idea?
A jump scare to me is something that startles you, which this movie has a lot. And to me, that was also a jump scare. Like, that didn't make me unnerved. It made me startled.
Interesting.
And it was a good jump scare. I'm not saying it wasn't. Like, it was very effective. It was one of the best things in the movie. But, like, what this movie had is a lot of hokey jump scares. And not, I don't know, it just...
I'm with you. So I want to mention before we wrap that there's also this one. This would be a relentlessly downbeat movie if not for
the cop,
Deputy So-and-so.
Deputy So-and-so is so great. I love him. So this cop shows up when Ethan Hawke falls through the the ceiling of the
like you do.
floor of the attic, like you do when you're startled by a projector that plays itself, or a scorpion or snake or whatever the hell it startled in that moment. And so he, for whatever reason, the cop came out with the ambulance, which I guess happens. And he doesn't want to go to the hospital because he's an idiot. He has another moronic decision. But this cop hangs out and goes, "Hey, you know how in your books you always have in the page where you thank people and like the acknowledgments?" He's like, "Yeah, you know how you always thank like Deputy so-and-so for helping you out?" He's like, "I'd like to be that guy." So he's like, "Okay, well, here's what I need. I need all this information about all these other murders that have happened." "Oh, you think these are connected?" No, nothing like that. I'm just doing research or whatever.
Right.
So this guy. But I love this cop so much because he's so, like, down to earth, except for the fact that he really should have at some point involved the rest of the police force, given that this is really important information to the case, but whatever. But he, at one point, he's like talking to him, and he goes, and Ethan Hawke is talking about that he's kind of creeped out by some things that have happened here, and he's like, you probably don't believe in any of that. And the cop goes, "I believe in all that stuff. I wouldn't spend a single night in this place."
Yeah,
that
is really good.
Funny. I love that line because I totally was with him. I was like,
are you kidding me? I would have spent one night here. And then he lists all the crazy things that have already happened.
Yeah.
I feel like that character saying that was how I felt about Ethan Hawke's character. So
there's a phrase called lampshading, where you have a character say what everybody would be thinking if the character didn't actually say it. In other words, you inoculate yourself against a complaint about the plot by having a character go, "Well, has anybody actually, well, why haven't we gotten rid of that cursed puzzle box that we keep on the dining room table?" And by having
why
a
did it
character
take him so long
say
to burn those?
Right. Having a character
wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yes, exactly. That's called lampshading. But sometimes it's not effective. Sometimes you can have the character lampshaded, but it's so patent that everybody just goes, "Well, that was an attempt at getting us to lay off, but it still doesn't make any sense. Why is he stuck around?" But
one of the only ones, and it still bugged me, and it bugged me from, and I know it's for the same reason that Super 8 looks like Super 8 is why you do Super 8.
Yeah.
But living in a modern world where the power didn't go out or whatever, let me tell you, when shit goes crazy in my house, I don't walk around in the freaking dark.
Yes.
Like, you know what?
I said that so many times.
Wake up the wife. It doesn't matter. Turn on all the lights. The power saving is not cool. If you're that freaked out, you're going to wake up the kids anyway because you're going to be yelling and screaming. I think he eventually does. Like, turn on all the lights. Every flashlight, all of it. Bang pots and pans. Call 911. You don't walk around in the stupid dark. And I know it's horror movie, but it just stuff. When we've decided that we're firmly modern, right?
Yeah.
But at one point the power is out. To be fair, at one point the power is out.
There's one of them where it's not, and I'm like, no, dude, you turn on every light. You don't tiptoe around or whatever the hell you're doing. You hall lights on, at least the hall light. Dad, what are you doing? I thought I saw something in the hall. That's all you have to say. You're not being more manly or whatever. These characters that do this, I'm just like, no one does that. That's the dumbest thing you can possibly do.
The first movie I saw where apparently overhead lighting just doesn't exist in this universe was Fincher. It was 7. In 7, it's like nobody seemed capable of finding a light switch anywhere.
Yeah.
And
that drives me nuts, though.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. There are some houses. I mean, we live in a house right now with no overhead lights, but even that, we've managed to put lamps everywhere so that.
Well, you can turn on lights. There's lights everywhere. It's like my brother. When I was gone, my brother, there was a guy who was part of the yogurt shop murders here in town.
Sure.
And I was gone over the holidays. My brother was watching our house, and that guy got arrested, and he ran for it. I guess he didn't, he got stopped, and he was afraid he was going to get arrested. Down the street, and there were helicopters, and there were sirens, and my brother's like, dude, I locked all the doors. I turned on all the lights.
Sure.
He's like, I didn't know what was going on, because he didn't see it until the news until later, and, he didn't know about But basically the guy basically made a run for it, stabbed a police officer, pulled a knife. The police officer even got shot at the time. I guess he was like, I'm not going back to jail. But yeah, when craziness happens, man, you don't just sneak around in the stupid dark. That's the one that, like, and I know, it's horror movie that people do dumb things in horror movies. It's just like why you don't do nameless other things. But the thing where we have a smart person who's doing very modern things like digitizing a, Super 8 movie and learning how to edit in Google, and then he can't be bothered to, like, turn on all the freaking lights in the house. Just that stuff, that's the stuff that really, I don't know. It's still, every time I watch this movie, go, Ethan Hawke, why aren't you, who cares?
Yes.
You're already freaked out.
Way, in the end, when they finally, you finally get the info dump that, hey, it's the kids who are doing it, by that time, it's too late, and the daughter is going to whack him. I have to say, once the movie took its turn into, like, being really supernatural towards the end, and maybe this is something I need to think about a lot as a writer, I lost a lot of my connection to it. In other words, somehow...
I did the first time. The first time, actually, where I kind of thought that I'd been seeing a lot of movies that had the kind of similar thing, and I'd seen some, closer to torture porn kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look, the surprise is this. And I really, the first time I saw it, I was like, it's kind of scary, but I don't really feel like the end is what it is. Like, it just kind of went, eh. The second and third time I saw it, though, I actually kind of was like, okay, that's actually like an okay twist. I don't know why it played out differently for me, but I somehow, like, was like, oh, okay, it's the youngest kid, they disappear into the movies, all that kind of stuff. It worked a lot better for me, and I'm not sure what changed, because usually once I've seen a trope where I'm just like, oh, it's that movie that does that, whatever.
Yeah, the thing with that,
and I think it worked, like, for whatever reason, I was, like, cool with it whenever I saw it again.
Yes, that's the part that I liked the least, was when they go into the movie, because it didn't make sense. I was like, physically, it doesn't make sense. Like, why can they do that? Why can the kid suddenly not be...
They do kind of deal with it. It's not actually within the movie. It's Bagul's netherworld, to quote Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, but it seems like it should have been, like, the kids should have, physically something should have happened to them before they could be in the movie. I don't know. Anyway, that part annoyed me. But the whole rest of it with the creepy soundtrack, and yes, I agree, Tony, I was saying the whole time, turn on the damn lights. But a lot of it was very, very effective. I mean, I was terrified.
Yeah. So we should probably wrap up.
Can I tell my Vincent D'Onofrio story now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, please.
Before I forget. Okay, well, this is actually isn't a Vincent D'Onofrio story about me, and I may come back next week and say that I have not divulged all these details accurately, but this is when my wife Jamie, who is on the show sometimes, who is very beautiful. She looks almost like if Betty Boop, the Betty Boop cartoons, was somehow turned into a real person. That's how she looks. That's not a description I've come up with. That's what literally everybody who ever meets her says. She is from upstate New York, and she was hired as a jazz singer for a Italian food restaurant, and she was performing. And she was done with her set, and then this very large man came up to her and was like, "Oh, you're very attractive. I'd like to take you out." And Jamie very quickly realized that this was Vincent D'Onofrio from The Cell. And she got kind of like, no. And it's like, oh, come on, I just got out of a relationship. Oh, come on. And she was like, no. And it was like, oh, well, I'll see you around. Well, this isn't over. I'll see you around. And Jamie was like, oh, okay, thank you. So she also had at that time a day job working for a security company doing call-ins when people's security systems were tripped, and some guy's security system is tripped, and she calls in and she's talking to this guy, and then she realizes she recognizes the voice, and who is it Vincent D'Onofrio.
Wow.
And he's like talking. There's like, your voice sounds familiar. And she was like, no, it wasn't. You know, I'm sure we've never met, sir. And he's like, the jazz singer.
The Jamie. So you're telling me that Jamie was supposed to be with Vincent D'Onofrio. It's like clearly fate, and somehow it didn't work, and she ended up with you. I don't know.
Well, clearly she was meant to be with me, but that's a whole other story.
They were
Jamie actually literally thinks that Jamie actually literally will tell you that she dreamt about me before meeting me. So I trump Mr. D'Onofrio. But anyway, so the very next day at work, there is full catered Italian food for the entire staff and everything. It's like, oh, this is pretty nice. Where'd this come? And it's like, well, Vincent D'Onofrio paid this for, so that, you know, he said that he would encourage you to go out on a date with him.
Oh my God, I am so jealous.
Jamie would tell you because she's kind of creeped out by Vincent D'Onofrio. So.
No, I love Vincent D'Onofrio. See, if I had been unmarried and had that same story, I would totally. And I gotta say, I'm not even so sure about the unmarried. I'm kidding.
Right.
No, I just love him. He is so adorable.
To be fair, I was going to make that joke myself.
Right.
Well, Jason looks like you better watch out. Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yes, if Vincent D'Onofrio randomly offers me.
I'll wait for when I see Vincent D'Onofrio coming. Luckily, that's real easy. You know?
We get off the phone, and all of a sudden Jamie's phone starts ringing. We're like, who's calling Jamie? Hey, so, like, did you get his number?
Yeah. The moment I saw Vincent D'Onofrio was in this movie, I was like, well, I'm going to tell. I hope I got all the details right. I may get off the phone and Jamie's in the other room. She can hear me. She'll probably be like, oh, yeah, you got all this wrong. So I may be giving corrections next week. But I had to.
We'll put that in the new regret the error section that comes at the very end.
It's like on SNL where they scroll like all the stuff that was factually accurate.
I already have, Trent Reznor did not write the music for The Conjuring. I'm like, okay.
Well, it's, all I get to say is Vincent D'Onofrio, you wanted her, but I got her. So, you may be the king, you may be the kingpin, but there's only one kingpin in this house.
Nice.
That's right. Awesome.
Okay. Well, in fact, I guess it's time for us to do our final thoughts, and then we'll come around to our endorsements. We'll go the same order. Tony, Julia, Jason, and Drew. So, Tony, final thoughts. Sinister.
I thought it was creepy, especially like we keep making these paranormal activity movies. And the first one came out, and it was decently creepy, whatever. But I thought this out-creeped those in a major way. And, in fact, I think it was 2 or 3 was coming out, and this beat one of those to the punch. And I remember specifically thinking, like, hey, that's cool. Somebody I know wrote something that definitely creeped me out way more than Paranormal Activity and in a lot of ways. And, it's got a clever twist. Again, I'm kind of with Drew on the Bagul. I don't know. I think he's creepy in the frames of film that he's in. I think that's really creepy. But I think that as you see him, his look isn't my favorite, monster, and it's never going to be.
Well, my whole thing about a monster is when they bring in a monster in a movie, I want to think if I was somehow in the same room with that monster, there would be no way I would be coming out of that room alive. I think I can take the Bagul. I would kick the Bagul's ass.
Yeah, but I mean, he's got touchstones of it and some other stuff. But again, it's definitely never stuck with me as like, oh man, that's the monster. But I was sufficiently creeped out when I saw it in the theater, and I still, the sound design helps a lot, to really sell it. And again, like I said before, you hang out with somebody and you're all writers and you're all actually, the character in the book is a writer too, so there's a little bit of that kind of stuff in there. And to see somebody be successful, now he's writing, several different things. One of them, the Deus Ex script
cool.
From the video game. That's, it's really cool to you have a friend who's, doing something successful, whether or not, I mean, Drew may argue differently, but I thought that was awesome, and I was sufficiently creeped out.
I would never begrudge anybody their success in this business. It's a tough business.
And I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it even more, which I didn't expect, because, like I said, usually once I've seen a trope that I'm just like, ugh. Like, I never want to see Shutter Island again, even though it's got great performances. Like, halfway through that, I was just like, well, great, I know what's happening. Please don't be that. And when it was that, I was just wanted to kind of walk out. And so when there's a trope that I've seen, I'm just kind of eye-rolling. Like, I didn't expect the second time for me to go, oh, now that kind of works for me. So, in that case, like, it did everything it's supposed to do. I can kind of understand where Drew's coming from. He is a terrible person in the movie and stuff like that. But for me, it creeped me out. And again, knowing that there are parents on the panel as well here on the podcast, I was just still like, oh, man, that's not cool. So it works for me. I don't know. Your mileage may vary once again. Yeah.
Okay, Julia, final thoughts on Sinister?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just and another thing I didn't say before, which it merits saying, I thought the chemistry between Ethan Hawke and his wife was terrible. I just didn't buy it at all. I was like, I don't believe these people have met before today. But the kids were awesome. They're really good actors, and yeah, as a parent for sure, I was creeped out not just by the ultimate solution, but by the fact that these kids are undergoing. I mean, like when the little girl's lying in bed and the little ghost girl is going shh next to the painting of the family that's been hanged in their backyard and the ghoul and the monster.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so terrifying to me. Like the idea that your kids are dealing with anything like that, or with the night terrors. It's just so scary. And then of course to have it be like that the kid is actually the one who does it. That's just horrible. But so there was a lot of really creepy stuff to me. But I think the scariest thing to me was definitely the actual the movies, the home movies, because it's like they show the family having a great time, and then they show the family being murdered, and there's this weird soundtrack.
Sure.
That was what was so scary.
Oh man, that lawnmower one just flipped me out. Like, I mean, the other ones are terrible, but there's something, I don't know, I guess the way that one's presented, and just the like, la la la, I'm just kind of running through the yard at night, and that the setup, because the other setups are creepy in the way that they have the music and everything like that to aid them, whereas the lawnmower one really kind of sells up until the point where there's a jump scare scream that's added. Like, it's kind of it's paced differently and stuff like that. And so all of that Super 8 stuff, if you're going to do a found footage movie, I think the idea, the stylistic choice of the Super 8 and all the way it looks and everything, like, I was down for that. So
I loved the stylistic choices on this. I loved the Super 8 business. I would totally recommend this movie, as a scary one. And I have to say, I like that there's, look, in other torture, I'm accustomed to torture porn being like, hostile, where you're actually, the eyeball, all that crap. None of that here. This is totally just freaking you out with your mind. And as Drew pointed out, Chainsaw was very much the same way. But I thought this was a super scary movie. I used to be a lot more freaked out about stuff with kids and the idea of kids being threatened and so forth. When I was first a parent, now I'm less afraid of it. And I think because now I'm able to I'm just able to sort of distance myself from it more. So, whereas once upon a time I couldn't watch anything that involved kids. Now I'm just less. I think I can separate that kind of fantasy from reality more. Either that, or I've just been jaded. Who knows? But I really liked this movie. So that was a vote up for me. And then Drew, what are your final thoughts? And then we'll go to the questions.
Again, apologies to, especially since this is a friend of Tony's. And again, I do not begrudge the guy's success at all. writing is a tough business. Lord knows everybody on this podcast knows that. However, I cannot recommend this movie in good conscience. I thought it was very generic. I have very little doubt that I'll even be thinking about it as I go to sleep, which a good horror movie should keep me up. And this is going, I was bored by this movie.
See, but The Conjuring didn't keep me up at all. In fact, this one I had to watch stuff afterwards to get it out of my head. But The Conjuring, I was able to go right to bed.
It's weird.
The commentary was fine. The commentary was fine. I'm saying this movie didn't have anything that was distinct about it to me, except for its use of technology and admittedly a very good score. I found the Ethan Hawke character very trying and annoying. And I kept hoping that there is an alternate reality version of this where it's a mashup movie where Jason Voorhees shows up, kills Ethan Hawke, kills Bagul, the rest of the family lives happily ever after. That would be my better version of this movie because I would pay to see that. I would watch that over. If I could just watch Ethan Hawke's character getting killed over and over again, that would be better than this movie. I'm sorry, I hate it.
Now you can use iMovies. What you do is you take Ethan Hawke's character from this, use iMovie, and start just placing his face on top of your DVD versions of
you could
Friday
just
the 13th.
create one of those little fan films that's made up,
where you
Ethan
put
Hawke
the head over
deserves
and
to die because he's a terrible human being. Bagul deserves to die because he's a bad excuse for a monster, and I can't abide that.
I just like this idea of this, not so secret DVD that Drew has. It's just Ethan Hawke pasted over all the faces of all the victims in Friday the 13th Part 3.
I like Ethan. That's the thing. I normally like Ethan Hawke.
Yeah. He didn't want to do. He was like, I don't know if I'm going to do horror movies. And then after this movie, he was like, oh hey, maybe that's the thing I like now.
He's been in a few lately. Yeah. I mean, it's. I was thinking about this while watching this. I was like, man, Ethan Hawke. You're trying to get your Vincent Price on. I mean,
yes,
yeah.
I haven't seen.
He wasn't into it at first. They kind of had to be like, dude, come on, we wrote this part for you. Yeah. And it's happened. The director was a friend. It's like, oh, we'll never get him. Well, maybe we can, and then all of a sudden, he was attached. So I think that's kind of cool when that kind of works out for you. But yeah, evidently he was like, I don't know, man, and has since, I guess, found a love for horror, which I think is cool.
He's found a new career in playing beleaguered dads, basically, and that's just what
or beleaguered vampires.
When you become a man of a certain age, these are the roles that you wander into. It won't be long before Ethan Hawke will become the contented retiree and beleaguered grandfather. It's just going to be, hey man, it's coming, boy. Just watch.
Jason is one of these people who always rounds up to the next decade, as soon as you enter the decade.
Yeah.
He'll be like, we're nearing 50, and I'm like, speak for yourself. I'm at the very beginning of my 40s.
For real. Speak for yourself.
I always imagine in Jason's head that he secretly looks forward to old age.
I think so.
Hey man, I look great at 50 is the thing.
He wants to be Edward Van Sloan from the Universal Dracula.
Yes. That guy actually, his age is hard to pin down too. Okay, let's get our that's our final thoughts. Let's do our endorsements. And I have a fun one. Let's go the same order. It was Tony, Julia, Jason, and then Drew. So, Tony, do you have anything to lay on us this week?
I know the Cabal cut of Nightbreed is imminently due, so I haven't gotten to check it out yet, but I'm definitely super excited about that. Oh, man, I was supposed to report on some more stuff from Fantastic Fest, and I've totally dropped the ball. I'm just drawing a blank, so I'll have to post some stuff later. Actually, hopefully, I did my first kind of sort of interviewee kind of fun thing with the dudes from Final Drive the other night, so we hope to put that up on our YouTube page at some point, and hope to do more of that, and we'll see what happens at Frightmare. I mean, not Frightmare, but Housecore Horror Fest, which is coming up soon. We'll see if we can round up some of that. We'll do as much as possible. We'll probably have reviews of what's going on there, since they were kind enough to have us for the podcast there. That's going to be kind of cool. My friend and video director Phil Mucci is going to be there showing his short films and videos, which he has a really cool style. So we'll probably post more about that as we lead up to that, because we want people to go to his retrospective. He just did a video for Monster Magnet that's kind of like, horror, sci-fi, bits of Akira meets global destruction and demons, and it's pretty awesome, called The Duke. And he just did that, so that's really cool. But yeah, I'll have to post online whatever I forgot, because I know I'm missing something. But those are my recommendations this week, for sure.
Very, very cool. And I will make sure that we get the interview that you did up on the YouTube page by the weekend. It'll take a couple days, and then it will be up.
Sure.
Absolutely. All right. Julia, did you have anything to endorse this week?
No, I'll pass. I can't think of anything.
All right. I should mention that the Nightbreed director's cut is actually going to be showing at Cinefamily in Los Angeles this week and next. I'm going to be out there, so I'm going to try and catch it either on the 20th or the 21st. And they're doing the director's cut plus a Clive Barker pop-up gallery exhibit in the lobby. So that sounds pretty good.
Well, that's cool. He's he's definitely one of those Renaissance guys. It's a really great artist as well. I mean, if you just want to sell art, it's good enough. I really think he's just that cool. That's really awesome.
With 40 minutes of new footage in a reconstruction personally supervised by Clive Barker. So
yeah, I mean, I saw that cut at Fantastic Fest, the previous, the 2013, I guess. Yeah. And it's really cool. I'm curious what new restoration they did, because I know that when I saw it, there was still, I mean, they did what they could. I'm curious if there's any new stuff. It's still really cool to see all of that.
Hard to say, but
really, really awesome.
For one thing, they're doing this in going along with the Blu-ray release, because it's coming out on Blu-ray on the 28th of this month.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So,
I thought it was closer than that, but that's cool.
So that's going to be cool. I'm definitely going to do that. And also, my endorsement this week, I'm going to have some new stuff coming up in a couple weeks, but this week I've been reading Guillermo del Toro short story collection. I mean, del Toro's not the author, he's the editor, and he's gathered together a bunch of short stories by a guy named Ray Russell for something called Haunted Castles, which is part of a set of Penguin horror books that del Toro has edited and written these really wonderful introductions for. Haunted Castles is full of Gothic horror by Ray Russell, who was writing in the 1960s, but all of his stories, although they take place in the modern era, are written like Edgar Allan Poe. Really wonderful, wonderful stuff. And it features the story Sardonicus, which was turned into a just great cult film by William Castle. So if you've I don't know. If you like Del Toro and you trust him, you should totally check out Haunted Castles, because it features some really fantastic horror short stories that I've never read, and I'm having a wonderful time making my way through them. So, Drew, do you have anything to endorse this week?
I have a few things. Some of them personal, some of them not so personal. First off, my birthday was a few weeks back, and because of that, I got a lot of books and comics and everything, and I've started to comb through them. I've been reading Anno Dracula, the Bloody Red Baron, which is the second book in the Anno Dracula series, and I was a little concerned because they were moving it a little further away from the original setting of the Stoker Dracula, but I've actually found it that I like this one a little better, because the juxtaposition between vampires in World War I is not something that has been done a whole lot, and I found kind of that mixture of historical characters and Gothic horror characters to be very interesting and intriguing, and I've been greatly enjoying it. I also got the recent Legion of Monsters miniseries in paperback form. That's by Dennis Hopeless, and it's got great almost manga style art, but all the Marvel 70s monster heroes are the main characters in that. For the most part, they retain their classic 70s designs, but sort of filtered through this more modern look, which I think is really nice. They use the more recent design for Dracula, which kind of was disappointing, but everything else, there's a lot of fun to read. This Friday, I am dusting off my MC persona to host the Monster Mash Booty Bash. That is a burlesque event at Elysium. I can already feel Max, our co-host from several weeks back at the Evil Dead 2, sharpening his fangs. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's all horror-themed and Halloween-themed burlesque routines, and I'm looking forward to getting up on stage and making a fool out of myself for your amusement. That doors are at 9 for that. On Sunday, Jamie is now going to be the new host of the Rockabilly Rock Out Karaoke Party. That is a weekly free karaoke party at Spinners. I should say Spinners Bar in North. It's going to be a lot of fun in North Austin. It's going to be karaoke of vintage rock and roll, vintage jazz, vintage country. It's going to be a lot of fun, and Jamie is going to make a great. They couldn't have asked for a better. Well, I guess they did search for a better host, but they found it because she's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to that. I love karaoke, so I will be there with bells on, but it's completely free from 7 to 11 on Sunday night, and that's every week. So if you're in the Austin area, please come by, say hi.
Outstanding. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, this was a really interesting conversation, and I love that there was even an argument. I mean, which can be more exciting than when we all just are enamored of a work. So very cool. Next week is going to be another terrifying film, which I'm really worried may suffer in that I haven't seen it in years, and we're coming to it now after having watched a number of movies like this. We're going to go all the way back to The Changeling, and I can't wait to see it, but I'm worried, so we'll see how it holds up.
No, it's still good, man. I
have a feeling it will be.
It's been months, but I saw it a while back. I think it was on Netflix for a while, and I had to watch it again.
Yeah.
It was on something, and I remember oh man, I'll check that out. And yeah, dude, it's still good.
In my mind, that movie and Ghost Story, which came out very, very close together, right? They fit into this perfect double feature, And Ghost Story still holds up pretty well too. We've got to get to that someday. All right. Thanks, everybody. As always, leave us reviews on iTunes. It helps people find the show. Come to our Facebook page. Let your friends know about the show. Play the show while they're around so they can walk by and go, what is that you're listening to? And you can tell them, leave comments. We'll totally engage with you. Accuse us of all sorts of crimes. And we will not even defend ourselves, but we will just ask you to listen more.
I feel like I have a lot to answer for tonight, personally. I gave in to the dark side. I gave in to the hate.
Well, I did that when we did Coppola's Dracula, so it's all good.
We all have our moments.
Yes. All right. Have a fantastic evening. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Later.
Night.